Welcome to Inside the Race. I'm Jamie McMurray. I'm actually going to take Steve Letart's place this weekend in this chair, and I've got two great analysts to help me out today, Kyle Petty and Todd Gordon.
Looking forward to what we got today, a different voice to kind of lead us down the path.
So when I think about Richmond, let me set you guys up this way. I put Richmond into a pretty unique category, and I would say similar to Darlington or Old Atlanta, because from a fan's perspective, I don't think it's the most spectacular race to watch as far as side-by-side racing or lots of accidents. However, the strategy that goes into it, when you pit, how all that works out, I find it very intriguing. And I think if you can go into these weekends with that mindset, it changes your perspective on it. Kyle, what did you take out of the weekend?
It does. It with the tire drop off, and you compare it to that. And listen, I may have argued the side-by-side racing with you for the first 10 laps when
it was incredible.
Yes, when Briscoe
fair enough.
I mean, those first 10 laps were like, who's going to lead this thing? Who's going to take control of it? But you're right. You go into this race. I've never gone into this race, watching this race, or even being in this race and saying, okay, somebody's just going to flat out run everybody all day long and just dominate. It's always a call. It's always a caution at a different time. It's always a tire change. It's a strategy that puts you in that position.
Transition from sunlight to start with the nightfall. We see that as well. I feel like as we broadcast these races, we have to broadcast them differently. I almost think as you watch it, you have to be educated what you're looking for, because things that happen now will affect what happens 30 laps from now.
Yeah.
And that's different here at Richmond. I agree with you. Atlanta fell in the same boat. That was one where you had to almost see the future to understand what was about to unfold in front of you.
Well, I mean, these races just typically don't have the accents or the cautions.
Yeah,
and
right.
I try to explain to people, when they throw the green flag at any of those three tracks, the pace is so fast, right?
Yeah.
And then you run like 5 laps, like, oh, it's slowing down quite a bit. And then you get 20 laps in, and you feel like you're crawling as a driver, but it's almost like driving on ice. And I just, from my perspective, drivers love that type of racing. Like when you have massive fall off, because it creates opportunity for you. And it's also such a mental game inside of the car, because you're like, when are we pitting? Like, what's our plan here, and why are other guys already pitting?
I always laugh because every driver thinks they're the best on worn out tires. You know what I mean? Every driver thinks, let's just get to those worn out tires and I can make some time for us. But it is, you look at those races and you talk about not being accidents, because you're racing your race in your car and you're racing that racetrack. You're not racing the competition. When the guy comes by you 6 wide on new tires and blows you away.
You're helpless.
Yeah, you're helpless. But you've got to have that mentality going in. And you don't put yourself in a position to get in an accident. You don't put yourself in a position to spin. You're on top of your car probably more at those places than any other place we go.
Yeah, it's impressive to see what you do. And when you do make a mistake, it's not like the razor's edge of the tire giving up all the grip, because there's no grip to start with, right?
Yeah, true. That's a fact.
Kyle, it's so funny what you just said, because my son, who's wanting to race right now, he asked me on Saturday night. He's like, how do you save tires, Dad? What was your strategy in that? And I said the same thing. I said, Carter, everybody thinks they're good at this. I said, what makes you really good at saving tires is having a really fast car.
That's exactly right. That's the
exactly
answer. That is the answer.
That is exactly what you have to have in order to have good fall off. What about just, overall thoughts about Joey Logano being able to get back to victory lane? Surprised?
No, not at all.
Not there.
Not there. And this is, I've won with Joey Logano here twice at Richmond, 14 and 17. 17 being a kind of sidebar, because that was the one encumbered win. But he gets this type of racing, that management of the race. And really, I think he and Paul Wolfe both, this falls in their wheelhouse. So to come here late in the season, this is when Team Penske starts their uprise, right? That didn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, you take, if I say Iowa, if I say Richmond, if I say Talladega, Atlanta, Daytona, it doesn't surprise me what the 22 are. Anywhere in between, I would be blown away if he was winning races like he is right now. I would be blown away at this season. I will say this season, because we've just not seen anything out of this team, this car, at those racetracks. We have out of Blaney. Blaney has raised his hand and said, I can run in the top 5 or top 10 and lead some races, but not out of this group.
He's the only Ford that can run in the top 10 in the intermediate, the high downforce places with a Ford. He's the only driver that does it. And he's special. And really right now, I think the Ford as a whole, they've got a new car coming next year. And I think that plays into the deficit that they have at intermediates. But for the run we're at, you get to racetracks like this where, being focused on top of it, Joey Logano's a winner.
Todd, you mentioned something just a second ago about this is when Team Penske kind of picks up their pace. You worked there forever. Do they intentionally save for this time of the year? Do you think that...
It's a great question. Todd, give us insight.
I would say that when you look at the definition of black to white, and we all know as racers that there's this transition from black to white that has many shades of gray. I would say the regular season and the summer, there's pretty much black and white at Team Penske. And I feel like they stay well to the rule book. And then as they see the competition explore areas and that becomes accepted, they understand what shade of gray they can migrate to. And that migration happens about this time of year. Roger runs a company that you have to be kind of buttoned up. If you go into any of the race shops, tile floors. Any dealership, it's the same tile floor. This is the detail that Roger expects. Yeah. And so they're not going to be out in that kind of gray area. They're going to stay kind of tighter to where the definition of the rule is and see where the sport evolves to. And then this time of year, they start to understand where they can kind of step their toe into what might be a little off-white.
Todd for president.
Yeah.
He tiptoed around that
all
so
the
lovely.
way. All the way.
He worked the word incumbent into
the
our discussion earlier. Yeah, went all the way around. It's great.
All the way. That
was perfect. Okay, so we talk about Joey Logano, the run that he's been on for the past 6 races. When I look at the chase, initially I thought zero chance that Logano is going to have a shot at winning this championship. But when I look at what he did at North Wilkesboro, the domination, and then the fact that he was able to win at Richmond, there are quite a few short tracks or shorter tracks in the chase. And let's just take a quick look at this real quick. I see Gateway right here, Bristol, I see Martinsville, Phoenix. Obviously, those guys are really good at. So 4 of these 10 races, I think line up really well for Joey Logano. Now, there are a few 1.5 miles that make me pretty nervous. Obviously, we have Charlotte, you have Vegas. Where else? We're going to Kansas. 3 of them actually in a row
Homestead
right there, which we talked about are going to be tough for him. But the fact that Blaney has run well at those, do you not think that gives some incentive for him?
I think Blaney has done it. He's out kicking the coverage.
Yeah.
I'll say it. I think Blaney's the most talented race car driver we have in the garage.
Fastest for sure.
I just think he gets more. I got the transition from Joey to Ryan. And Joey has strengths and Ryan has strengths. And Ryan's strengths show at 1.5 miles. He's just his hand speed of catching cars, his ability to drive on the edge, and just Ryan is, I don't know that I feel like there's anybody that matches him. For Joey, I think those 1.5 miles with the Ford that they have this year, and this isn't a Joey thing, this is where the manufacturer is, they're at a deficit. And that's going to be a challenge. And they start with Darlington, which was a tough race for them. For Joey, that was the first that we went to the 750 and the simple diffuser. But I almost called Darlington on that, although it's a simple diffuser race, another one of those kind of intermediate racetracks.
It's kind of a one-off, right? Like when I think about Darlington and Talladega, which is on this list, that's 2 really, really unique tracks. Talladega, we can argue that Logano could go to that track and win.
For sure.
Yep.
Darlington was a disaster, and the only thing that would give me hope for them is that they ran so bad in the spring that maybe they come back with a different mindset. Yeah,
and so I look at these races, and especially for Joey, is where's that team at, and where's Ford at, and I'm going to take Joey out of the equation. I go back to exactly what Todd said. Where's Ford at? Where are they going to be when they show up at these races? What I find interesting about the whole year, as I look at the year in its totality, is how hot Tyler Reddick was when the year started.
Yeah.
The run in points that Denny Hamlin made to get to where he's at. Now the run that Joey Logano. Who's in the 4th quarter going to make that run for the championship? Who is it? It's a year of streaks. To me, that's what this year has been played out as. And we're watching Joey, and we're watching that march to the playoffs. But once you trip over and you're in those final 10 races and you look at these, who's going to make a run in this? Who's going to get hot right here? Is it going to be a Ryan Blaney? Is it going to be a Ty Gibbs? Is it going to be somebody like that who gets hot, who is really pretty good at all of these racetracks and is really pretty consistent? Is it going to be Denny Hamlin, who makes his second streak? I don't know, but I can't. I look at Joey right now, but I only look at him in the context of he's climbing the ladder, but I'm not sure where he's going to be when we get here.
Well, I think it would be hard to argue that Denny Hamlin will be the favorite for the championship when we get there. But the one thing that sticks out to me as I look at all of these races on that board is that Joey Logano in the past has won at every single one of them. So there are no bad racetracks for him. And if I'm on that team, the one thing that I'm just harping and putting into everybody's head is that momentum is a real thing. And they have momentum starting at the right time. This weekend at New Hampshire, I expect them to run really well.
Pit crew runs, I mean, they're top 10 pit crew every week. They've got speed there. Paul calls excellent races. Paul keeps that program going. And that, I feel like there's a lot of goods for them. I just don't know how they overcome the aero deficiency that if they feel like they've had. And that's why they're working on a new one. But we'll see where this one plays out. It's been a great run. They were 20th in points. They're 9th. 1 point out of 8th at this point. It's been a great run.
Well, I mean, to me, as I look at this, and I'm the 22 team, it's the 3 races in a row at Kansas, Vegas, Charlotte. If you can just manage the
blue collar.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think he can do that. Joey Logano has
Chicago
the strength for that.
starting this streak. He finished 12th.
Yep.
That's what they need to. I mean, they don't need to compete for top 3s, but if they can put themselves in the top 10, they can figure out how to battle out a 9th or 10th place finish and a couple stage points. That can change the whole dynamic.
So Todd, you mentioned Paul Wolfe's name a few minutes ago, and you can argue best crew chief in the garage. Been around for a long time. You were a crew chief. I mean, what do you see as being his best strengths?
Attention to detail and not being emotionally driven. We always talk about Paul calling a great race because Paul will digest. He doesn't do all the math. He has engineers for him, but he digests that very factually. And I think at times you see him call races that make sense. It's not emotional. You're not attached to something. He just calls what can be his best opportunity and his attention to detail. Yeah. Paul is just buttoned up. And I got to work alongside Paul for 10 years at Team Penske. I've watched what he's able to do.
We've been discussing the point standings, the run that Joey Logano's been on. You see he's down there in 9th place right now, just ahead of Chris Buescher. And when I think about the run that he's been on since the race at Sonoma was over, 31 points behind the cut line after Sonoma, we're trying to discuss, can he just make the chase? And we knew that the short tracks were going to play into his favor, but when you look now at just this timeline of the points that he's been able to make up, the 2 wins since Sonoma, the amount of top 5s, top 10s, he's led 419 laps in that. That is incredible stats for him. He now finds himself going from 31 down to 142 points above the cut line. What a run.
Yeah, it is. And I had a conversation with Paul at Coronado the week before Sonoma, and they were in the dumps, and he wasn't like panicked. And I said, you got a stretch coming that will be good for you guys. And he said, yeah, definitely. Short track racing is where we're good. I mean, we've got short tracks and a couple speedways to close out the regular season. I'm not in panic mode yet, and they have fully taken advantage of this.
Yeah,
starting at Chicagoland.
Yeah, and they have, and that's a great point. I'm going to throw cold water on some of this because that's what I do. Is he was out 31, but let's look at who he passed: Shane, Hendrick, Wallace, Suarez, Byron, Hocevar, and Buescher. As we've seen him climb through there, those guys have not done anything spectacular during that same series of runs. Joey Logano has leapfrogged them. So this is not the sharp end of the stick. The sharp end of the stick is Hamlin, Blaney, Gibbs, and Reddick. That's where he's got to go to. But that's been the fascinating point to me, is I look at not where he's at, but how much he's caught up to the guys at the sharp end of the stick.
And versus those guys, he's collected more points in the last 6 races than
That's
any
what
of
I
them.
look at more than anything else.
Yeah, and guys, the one thing that sticks out to me on here is his average finish in the last 6 races, 6.6.
Yeah.
That's incredible. That is hard to do at the races that we've been to, and I think it shows the speed that those guys have had. Kyle, when you said cold water, I thought you were going to point to this 1.5 mile stats of what he hasn't been able to do, and we talked about that. There's 4 1.5 miles in the chase. It's going to be tough for him. Just when you look at where he ranks, I mean, it's essentially the worst of everybody that's going to be in the chase heading into those.
Yeah, and listen, whatever it is with this car is not giving him the feel.
What do you think that is, though?
I have no idea. I have no idea because we know if we just say, here's Blaney, we know these cars can run fast, but Joey can't get him to that place to get the speed out of him. He finds that feel that he wants maybe, and from the handling standpoint, but his handling and what he feels has no speed. What Blaney feels is speed. That's what he goes after. That's what it seems looking from the outside in. He doesn't care what it feels like. He's just going to be on top of it and drive it.
I've had both of them. I crew chief for both of them, and they're different. They're different. I feel like Blaney is very much a hands driver. Like he wants to feel you think about Kevin Harvick back, when you always look at Kevin always feeling where the front tires are. Blaney is one that you watch his hands. His hands are active. He's very active with his hands. I don't feel like Joey will do that, but that's not Joey's comfort is
not his
taking
style.
care of the car, is being smooth on inputs. And that just when you're aero deficient, that's tough to do because at an aero deficiency, you almost have to run it on the ragged edge and be overstepping that edge.
Just thinking back to Richmond and Hendrick Motorsports, it's been a little bit off, right, this year. Certainly not to the standard that we expect them to be at. I mean, they're the Yankees to me.
They were 1,
NASCAR.
2, and 3 in points at this point last year.
Yeah, it's crazy how fast that can change. And I thought with Chevrolet getting the new nose, Todd, you mentioned earlier that Ford was going to get a new body as well. I mean, I thought this year they would just, no doubt be way ahead. That has not been the case. But they've all had good runs at Richmond, which historically has not been a great track for them. So you see those guys getting back where they need to be?
Now, I feel like this was a step that they needed forward. I think when they went in the off weekend, they were focused on what they had to do. There is a learning curve to a new body, whether it be Toyota when they brought theirs, Ford when they brought this Dark Horse. There was a learning curve. We questioned the Ford. It took them half a year. Well, with 2 separate packages and 2 separate power packages, learning what that body's going to do to different spoiler heights, different diffusers, it's a longer learning curve. And I think the Chevrolet's Hendrick at the 1.5 miles, kind of right out of the bat, they were decent. The simple diffuser, these short tracks, they were struggling. And I think this was a data point that moved them forward.
Yeah, and listen, and we talk about this, and I think the problem with Hendrick is we compare it to Hendrick. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I mean, it's
totally.
No, I know.
We
You
expect it
expect
to
so
be
much out
so
of
you
them.
expect it, and Steve and I talked about it last week. Is you just think this is where they should be naturally, and when they're not, it's like, oh my gosh, the sky's falling.
The 3 cars that have run every race, Alex Bowman, obviously the Vertigo Challenge eliminated him from it. They're all in the chase right now.
Yeah.
If we called it today, they're all racing it. So I mean, they're not bad. They're just not Hendrick good.
That's right.
I think it's so hard too when you watch these races and you see their running position. It's such a small margin from being exceptional to just being average. And average can put you in 20th, and you have to put that whole day together. But it does look to me like they did an awesome job at Richmond of being able to manage all that.
I find that they run, and you can speak to this. I find they run in no man's land a lot of times, where strategy's not going to really help them. And if the strategy goes wrong, it's going to hurt them. So they just stay the course. You know what I mean? They just stay. There's a no man's land in there, somewhere in there.
If you run 7th to 14th, you're not pitching. You're not trying to hit the home run ball.
Right. That's right.
Because you're still in a position you can kind of race your way forward.
Yeah.
If you're 20th,
oh yeah,
strategy calls easy.
Strategy calls easy, man. That's a no-brainer.
The risk is
dude.
nothing.
Yeah.
The reward's big.
Yeah.
But to your point, that no man's land is a big deal.
It's a big deal, and that's where they've run this year. They need to move forward, or either move back and throw something at it.
So Todd, you mentioned you felt like Ryan Blaney, the most talented guy in the garage area. I would say somebody else on that list would be Kyle Larson, another Hendrick Motorsports driver. And it did not look like a good day for them. Qualifies 30th. When they threw the green flag, he moved forward for a little bit and then started fading to the back. They made 10 pit stops through the day, but ultimately came home 6th. And I thought you said something interesting earlier about the communication with Cliff Daniels and Kyle Larson about, hey, it's raining in Knoxville. We might have you a ride. What do you think?
I mean, the mental positivity, I think Cliff does a great job with Kyle. I think he understands what makes Kyle tick. I think Kyle's Kyle's not Joey Logano. Kyle's just a raw talent, and he's emotionally driven. And I think when you're in good positions, I think back to that Coke 600 halfway through, Cliff gave him we've been on fire and everything else, we got to quit this thing. But he gave him that carrot. Hey, we're working on a plan to get you to Knoxville. It's still raining there. And just to get Kyle give him a positive thought so that he could build positivity coming forward. And that, I thought that turned their day.
Well, this is not a normal Larson day. He had 2 free passes. Twice in the race, they had to do a free pass. They had to put a set of scuffed tires on at one point. I said they pitted 10 times. You only get 9 sets of tires. So they really put together a day to get a 6th place finish. And then obviously it rains at Knoxville. Let me read you Kyle's, because I'm going to be honest. I went to bed at 10:30. When the race was over, I turned the TV off and I went to sleep. And I woke up at 6 a.m. and I was still a little tired. When I woke up, I saw that Larson had actually flown out to Knoxville, won the Knoxville Nationals. So the race gets over at 9:15 Central. He lands in Knoxville just before midnight their time, gets to the track about 12:15, and wins the race at 1:41 a.m. local. Think about everything that he went through. And I mean, listen, we can argue who the greatest is, but Larson's is on that handful of 4 or 5 guys that are just awesome, Kyle.
Yeah, just an awesome talent. It's funny when you look at what he's capable of doing. And I was fortunate not long ago to sit down with Mario Andretti. Same thing. Anytime, anywhere, any place, just give me a call and I'll show up and drive your car. And that's kind of the way Larson is. And he's able to adapt so quickly. I think that's why we look at where he's at in the Cup Series right now and we scratch our heads sometimes, because he can go and do this. But when you can do what he did, you get up in the morning with no hope of going to Knoxville, with not even crossing your mind, not preparing for it mentally, not anything. Run a Cup race, have your 10 pit stops, get your 2 waiver rounds, do all the things that he had to do just to finish 6th, and then go there and win. That's not only talent, that's mental talent. That is a focus that only a few drivers have.
Yeah, and to me, like when we talk about the best drivers or the most talented drivers, Kyle is in a different category, and I mean we can argue that Blaney's the best in Cup right now. I think, that's the consensus I think among most of the drivers, that Blaney can get the most out of his car. What makes Kyle so special is that he can get in all these different cars and go do that, right? And we've watched some of the other Cup guys go try to run dirt or do other things. They run well, but like the fact that Kyle gets in and just wins most of the races, and he loves that. And I think your point, Todd, that Cliff coming on the radio and just giving him that little bit of a boost. Like I know Kyle, and Kyle inside, Kyle does not want to let them know how much he wants to go do that, right? Because his focus he's been, I've criticized, everybody's criticized him, like, hey, this is your job. This is where you need to be focused. Right. And he's downplaying that, but I love that Cliff played into it.
Yeah, understanding what your driver has and who your driver is and how he's motivated. And this just is, I agree with you. For somebody to hop in any race car, any place, Kyle Larson is immensely talented. He can hop in and go fast. And that's just, it's incredible how Cliff in this pairing has continued to mature, to understand. Cliff this is a great tool, Kyle Larson. How do I get the best out of my tool?
Yeah.
And at that point, give him a little carrot, make him feel a little better. That's going to help our day and also make his day better.
Yeah, I'm gonna say this. I'm old, so I've been around a long time. I've seen a couple of guys who came into the sport of Cup racing with a ton of natural talent for a Cup car. Tim Richmond being probably the first one and Kyle Busch being the second one. They came just for a Cup car. But Kyle Larson, and I never was fortunate enough to grow up around sprint car drivers and dirt racing and that type of stuff. But Kyle Larson is like the Tony Stewart. Anytime, anywhere, any place. Yep. He is that mode. And that's a different mode than a Tim Richmond or a Kyle Busch. That's a different level. That's a Mario Andretti level. That's that kind of place. So it's phenomenal. And we talk about it all the time. And even though he's not had the success in the last year or so at the Cup Series, that does not diminish the talent and who Kyle Larson is.
One guy that we have not talked about today that I think we have to bring up is Chase Briscoe, because the whole discussion leading into the race, and I love James Small. I don't think I would want him as my crew chief because he's so blunt. And
but he's great for us.
And I'm emotional, and I don't think I could take that. But, he talked about this was not a good track for Chase Briscoe. And
That's
dude,
right.
Briscoe was so fast all race long. Did an exceptional job. I mean, obviously the race got away from him on that last green flag pit stop where his brake pedal went long, but awesome job by him.
Yes, and one of the things I've been so fascinated about this 19 team is that this is year 2 of Chase Briscoe, James Small being together. I feel like in year 1, and this progresses this year, that places that Chase Briscoe was good, James Small has figured out how to be good with him. And places that James Small was good, Chase Briscoe's figured out how to be good with him. Places that Martin ran really well and Chase didn't, when Chase was in the 19 car, all of a sudden they run well at those places. Like they have definitely leaned on each other's strengths and leaned into them. And this was one, I mean, you think of Martin Truex Jr. and Richmond, you think of a guy that's going to compete for wins.
Yeah, for sure.
And that 19 car with Chase Briscoe in it looked like what Martin Truex Jr. used to do.
Yeah, and I'm going to circle back to Cliff and to Kyle. The way Cliff motivates Kyle is one way. This may be the way that James motivates Chase. This may be the type of motivation
With a
Chase
whip?
needs. Yeah,
right.
because everybody plays different. Every player on a team. You talk to a good coach, and every good coach will tell you he has to talk to his quarterback or his running back. It's a different game, and he has to understand that. And I think that's where Cliff is good, but I think that's where James is good too.
I know we talked about Joey Logano in this championship. Chase Briscoe has to be in the discussion to compete for a championship, because when I look at racetracks that there just really aren't many that he's weak at. He's really good at road courses. He's good at short tracks. He's good really across the board.
Well, we talk, and I agree with that. And then I'll go back to the piece that you talked about, talking to your kid about how to save tires with a fast race car.
That's right.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
Anybody in a Gibbs car right now, I feel like, I mean, you look at it, the
Yeah.
Toyotas, I think, are exceptional. And I think the 4 JGR cars all have to be in the discussion.
Yeah, for sure. I think when you look at it, and you said it earlier, Denny Hamlin has to be a favorite. But these guys are in that conversation, just as Tyler Reddick will be back in that conversation, or a Kyle Larson or a Joey Logano. As we get into these 10 races, they are worthy of discussing and saying, yes, they've got a shot.
Well, I think without a doubt, if you're Denny Hamlin, the people that you're worried about are your 3 teammates and the 2 2311 cars.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, guys, it's time for Weekend Winners presented by Powerball. And Kyle, you have the honor. You get to go first.
I get to go first. So my weekend winner is crazy. You guys are going to call me crazy, but I'm going to say Tyler Reddick. Okay, and I say that because,
Crazy, yes.
and I say that because
For his qualifying position?
for his qualifying position, for the way he's run dead last the last 2 or 3 weeks. I mean, we saw him, 4 laps into the race at Iowa. He's standing at the infield care center. So maybe this stops the fall. Maybe this is a ledge that they can land on and start to climb again. So that's my weekend winner. They have seemed to turn a corner, at least at this one race. Can they build from it?
Yeah, they needed to kind of get back on rails, and it seemed like we didn't think until we got halfway through the race that it seemed like the train got back on rails. I like that one. I'm going to go a little different direction. My weekend winner is Josh Berry. 3 top 10s in a row. He's without a ride next year. We know that Jesse Love's going to replace him in the Wood Brothers car, but I feel like Josh Berry and the 21 team, they haven't given up. And I feel like this should be a Josh Berry racetrack, but he's definitely put it forward. I think Josh Berry was my weekend winner.
Yeah, I hope it's not too little too late for Josh Berry. Great guy. I think he's a tremendous talent too. I hope he can find himself somewhere next year. I'm going to go with someone we haven't discussed on this show, and it's going to be the guy that finished 3rd, Austin Cindric. I thought he had an exceptional race. Maybe had the fastest car, just could never get there. Had the issue on pit road with Suarez, but finds himself now 57 points up on the cut line, 2nd top 5 of the year. So I'm going to give an attaboy to Austin Cindric. Welcome back to Inside the Race. We are joined now by the crew chief who won this weekend, and with that win, it puts him as the winningest active crew chief in the Cup Series. That's got to be great to hear, huh, Paul?
Yeah, well, I've been doing this a while, Jamie, so I'm not sure, back in when I got started there, we had some good stretches and stacked up a lot of them. It seems a lot harder these days, as competitive as the field is from front to back. So, obviously fortunate to be with a great team like Team Penske and have great drivers over the years, and we've been able to, put some good stats on the board.
Have you been surprised by the success of the 22 team over the past 6 races? I remember talking to you at Sonoma, and we're just like walking through the garage, and you're like, man, we're doing everything right. Things just aren't falling our way. And man, the run that you guys have been on the last 6 weeks has been impressive.
Yeah, I don't know that surprised is the word. I mean, I think a bit of relief more than anything. Like I felt like, this stretch of races, starting back at Wilkesboro and, Iowa was a bit of a question mark just because that's a little bit of a unique short track. But then obviously going to Richmond and looking forward to Loudon, Daytona, like these are tracks that we've historically, had speed, been a contender. So I felt optimistic about it. But like when you have the struggles and the challenges we've had to start this season, you start to wonder, when's this going to turn around? So it's a bit more of just a feeling of relief, but not really surprised that we've been able to do what we've done. But just good to see that, you know, talk about the process and how we go through and race every week and take information from what little bit of testing we get and applying it and just really seeing all that kind of get the results from it. It feels good, and obviously we've been able to climb quite a bit in the standings as well. So all good stuff, and just proud of like the guys sticking with it, right? Like it's easy to get down and no one wants to, do their job. It's not fun when you're not winning races, but everyone from, the mechanics on the cars, the guys back at the shop building cars, and then the pit crew and whatnot have just really kept pushing pressure and making the most of now our opportunities at our tracks that are our strength.
Well, you just mentioned the process. Has something changed? I mean, as things weren't going the way that you wanted them to earlier in the year, have you changed that process?
No, I wouldn't say we've changed the process. I think it's sticking to what the process we know has been successful. I think you always have to adapt as things change or maybe rules change, or we're always looking to improve car performance. But I guess when I talk process, I mean more of the way we go about that. But yes, there's always new information or different information that we will react to and maybe change things on the car. But there's a way, and everyone has their part from when it starts, early stages of car build to, the final changes on the setup plate, and the engineers and everyone else has their part making all this happen. And I think we've continued to let everyone do their part and be able to, come to the racetrack and see the results here lately.
So let's go back and talk a little bit about Richmond this weekend. A couple of things. Did you think heading into Richmond, based on what happened at North Wilkesboro, that you guys would be a contender to win? And then you get to the track, you do your practice and qualifying. Based on what you learned in that, did you go into the race feeling good about it?
Yeah, I felt like Richmond, we were going to have a shot at it. Practice started well. I mean, we were, especially long run, we had good speed in the car, and felt like, if we could make the right adjustments, small little tweaks, that we could be a contender. I mean, we had that, we saw that speed in practice. But, as you talk about, practicing on Friday afternoon, it was pretty hot, and then you get into Saturday, the temps were down, and obviously it goes into the night, the track changes a little bit. So you have to stay on top of those adjustments, of course. And, it's one thing to be able to run top 10, top 5, but to really have a shot at winning is when you have to really fine tune and really keep up with the small changes that are the difference maker as the night goes on and track conditions change.
So, I mean, what was the struggles? What did you guys struggle with on Saturday night? What were you adjusting on the car? What was Joey's complaints?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing for us was just continuing to keep the rear grip in it on the long run, getting off the corner. I think as you look at the guys we were racing, we actually started the race close. Seemed like our long run was probably our strength versus, the 19. But as we got through the middle part of the race, obviously everyone's working on their cars. You're putting different sets of tires, which, we're planning to use every set of tires we have laying in the box. As we know, tire degradation at Richmond's huge. So you don't always get, we try to match tire sets up and get our staggers and spring rates and all those types of things consistent as possible. But we've just seen that it's, at times you have to make compromises. And there was one point in the race where I told Joey that, in my eyes and in my opinion, this was probably our worst set of tires, but we had to bite the bullet and use them. And of course, that was the run we got off. Now, the 19 did a good job on that restart and was able to take control of the race, and then follow that up with probably our worst run of the race as far as where the car was at. So we kind of lost some ground, and I was like, well, these guys have stepped it up. We're going to need to find a little more here to have a shot at it. And then the strategies are playing out, of course, and we're seeing guys, that one caution where we had, I think there was 4 laps on our tires. It was kind of split the field of whether we were going to stay out or pit. We knew our car was good on the long run, so I wasn't super concerned with pitting at that point. As long as we get a good start, I felt like we could get some track position on those guys that did take tires. And then on the longer haul, it would kind of equal out for us. And fortunately, it played out that way. And, but then, we got to that point where I think it was the 20, and a few of the other guys were on a different strategy than us in the 19. So it was like, we're kind of racing the 19, but we're also racing this other strategy and trying to make sure you get all that right. Was definitely a challenge, and obviously exciting as well.
So Paul, explain to me, for the 22 team, how does the strategy, how does the plan, how does it work going into the race, and how does it work throughout the race? Is that something that you lean on the war room to help you with? Is that something that it's the guy sitting right next to you is laying out, like, here's our options? How do you guys go about that process?
Well, it's a little of all of that, I guess. We have guys back here at the shop. Obviously, I have my engineer sitting next to me on the pit box. And then we have pre-race kind of rough talks with the driver, right? We'll try to let Joey understand, how we believe the race is going to play out and what our, game plan is, if you will. Obviously, that has to adjust according to conditions and how the race is playing out, but at least give him an idea, and so he knows when he's inside the car of what we're thinking, because obviously Richmond's a place where you have to manage tires a lot, right? And so making sure he understands, through a stage, like, what's the plan? Are we pitting once, pitting twice? So he can kind of gauge what he's doing, behind the wheel. So as we're laying out a basic strategy, specifically to Richmond with the high tire fall off, you're basically looking at your lap time curve throughout a run, right? And you calculate the numbers to try to predict, as we look at those stages, are we gonna pit twice or 3 times? That was kind of the difference maker in the third stage, was splitting it up amongst 3 runs or 4 runs, and a lot of that depends on how your car is. So it may look different on paper for the 22 versus the 19 or the 20 or whoever. It could look different based off from the strengths and weaknesses of your car. So I think at times that's where you saw a little bit of a split strategy, and or at times you're like, well, if we can't beat them with the same strategy, let's try something different. So there could be a little bit of both going on. But for us, we pick what we think's correct. Now, as the race is going on and track conditions change, you have to be able to adapt on the fly as you see lap time fall offs changing. Those types of things may look different as the race plays out. So you're always monitoring those things and trying to, make the best decisions. Obviously, there's factors in there that you don't know, of obviously an untimed caution or lap traffic, and, we try to predict all those things, but it's not an exact science. So there's a little bit of a, taking all this information and then a little bit of a gut feel too, maybe of how you feel the race is playing out in general. So also you saw the pitting, when to pit versus your competitors. That's a big thing at Richmond because, one lap is a lot of track distance time, right? Like if you can jump somebody, short pit them a lap or 2 or 3 laps, it's quite a big difference. So as we saw the race coming down to the end there, my plan originally was, hey, once we get to the 19, as we were catching them, let's peel off right when we get to them. Hopefully that gives us that 1 lap to jump them and get the lead. So I'm messaging with Coleman, our spotter, and we're talking on channel 2, but you're trying not to give away exactly what your plan is, right? Because everyone's scanning to try to understand when you're.
So hang on, explain to me.
Yeah.
So the race is going on. You guys are like 2 or 3 seconds behind Briscoe. I think he complained about maybe some brake issues, and all of a sudden you're like, well, we're actually going to get to him right before we pit. You mentioned messaging Coleman. Is it a text message? Like what do you mean by that?
Yeah, just as simple as a text message, like I said, that's my way of communicating with him off the radio, right? Like just a simple text message. We're on channel 2, right? Like I communicate a lot of things to him on channel 2. So we're doing a little bit of both, but obviously teams are going to scan our channel 2. Anyone can listen in to our conversation. So you're like trying to be discreet about it, not to give away what maybe your strategy is. As I know, I said, how important it is to get that 1 lap on them or 2 laps on them.
So then just explain to me the process. Joey catches the 19, gets to his outside. As soon as he clears him down the backstretch, you guys pit that lap. Was that on Joey? Was that the spotter? Was that we knew as soon as we caught him? Like, how did that get communicated to Joey to pit on that lap? Because to me, that was the winning move of the race.
Yeah, that was the spotter letting him know. Like I said, I was communicating to him, hey, we need to pit. And, once we're in the middle of passing, because we couldn't get down, I think there ended up being a lap car. So the lap I really wanted to pit, we couldn't get down to pit. So then we end up outside of the 19, I believe. And we're like in the middle of passing him. So I was like, okay, as soon as we clear him, I'm like, we're going to need to get to pit road. Otherwise, he's going to pull the move of pitting us 1 lap and jumping back in front of us again. And to the point, like I said, our cars got pretty equal there towards the end. So I was concerned, whoever comes off a pit road last, be tough to beat them. Not saying we couldn't, because we were marginally better on the long run maybe, but it's just, that was an important part of the race of who was going to come off a pit road first. So with all that being said, Jamie, we're also like, when you talk about pitting 3 times or 2 times and you're like splitting up the basically the use, getting the most out of your each set of tires to maximize that strategy, like you don't want to short pit them too much, because we're also we're like trying to race the 20 as well. And I didn't really know how that was going to play out because they were on a different strategy and tire usage. So it was like, yes, we want to short pit the 19 to jump them, but we also can't short pit too much or we're not going to get equal use out of our runs of our tires and maximize our time during that stage. So there was multiple things going on with teams being on different strategies as well.
Yeah, well, it was a lot of fun to watch all of that play out. And Bell, you're right, that added a whole different factor into how the race was going to play out. It was great that you guys were able to get the win. I look at the 22 season and I think about, heading into Sonoma, you're 20th in points. And then, you're 6 races later, you guys are 9th in points. And I feel like the discussion earlier in the year was all about you need to be in that like top 6 or 7 if you want to race for the championship. When I look at the run you guys have been on over the past 6 weeks, you guys have been exceptional. You've really turned your year around. I know the Chase has, 4.5 mile racetracks in it, but it also has some short tracks in it, which you guys have been great at. Where do you think you guys stack up right now going into the Chase? And what's maybe the mindset or the preparation as you go into these 1.5 mile races?
Yeah, I mean, first off, I totally agree with the whole, when you kind of look at the point system and how it works. And, I think we felt the same way. And I'm not saying I totally have changed how we felt on maybe where you need to be to have a legitimate shot, but it's definitely eye-opening to how much we really have gained. I felt like at one point, right, we're like, well, let's hope we can get in this thing, right? And now we're sitting like 9th and a few points out of 8th, and it just goes to show, if you get on a run, and put together a bunch of really good races, that you can maybe score more points than what you think. And some of that, I think, at least at the part of where we're at from that, whatever you want to say, that 5th to 15th range, like, I don't know how much consistency is there. It's like you see guys, and we're an example of that, like, can go weeks and not run good, and then all of a sudden you run good for 3 or 4. Like, the consistency amongst the field seems like just different than maybe it was when we were in this format how many years ago, right? And to the point where I'll say, well, if you're not in the top 3 to 5, you don't have a chance. But I just think the racing in general is a little bit different, and the competition amongst the field, and how hard it is to be just dominant, right? Like, have cars where, like, you just know every week you're going to unload and be the best. Like, I feel like back when I got started in this, 15 years ago, like, I don't know, you had teams that could get an advantage with just their car in general, right? And so you could see guys go on runs, and I don't know, you just don't see that as much. And maybe that's part of the, don't count yourself out just because you're 10th in points. And I think maybe we're a little bit of an example of that. So I think that's gives us a little bit of, optimism, I guess, if you will, as we look at getting ready for the chase to start. And yeah, to the 1.5 miles and, our weaknesses, if you will, I feel like we have tried some things this year that we've maybe seen some small gains from them. So we're not by no means going into this thinking we don't have a shot, but I'm also realistic enough to know that we've got work to do to be a legitimate contender, because it's not just short tracks, right? If it was 10 short track races, sure, count us in. But we know we're going to have to find a little bit more at a few of these races to call ourselves a legit contender. But I like where we're at. I mean, obviously, the momentum, the success we've had here of late, is good. It keeps everyone upbeat, and Joey's pretty optimistic. So I think that's important. And, we just got to continue, like I talked about the process earlier, just stick to our process and continue to be smart with how we move forward.
Well, it's going to be fun to watch how the chase all plays out for you. There's no doubt you're one of the best to ever do it. Congratulations on the win at Richmond, and we wish you the best of luck this weekend at New Hampshire. All right, welcome back to the lab. We're going to break down exactly all the different pitch strategies that we saw from Richmond. And Todd, when we talk about Richmond, lots of tire fall off. The teams had 9 sets of tires to deal with, and there was a lot of different ways to manage this race. So real quick, just what we're looking at here, we've got Chase Briscoe, who's going to be the red line, exactly the strategy they were on, which I would say was the traditional
traditional winner strategy, yes.
Yep, and then we're going to highlight also SVG and Ryan Preece, because those two are in this battle to try to make the chase, and kind of what got Preece behind. So go ahead and Todd, tell us what you see.
Well, there's a couple things. I want to lay out the 19 to start with. You see this pit stop here, that's splitting stage 1. You've got a stop at the end of stage 1, then 2 stopping stage 2, kind of the traditional kind of top 10 method of doing this. Stop the end of stage, and 3 stopping stage 3. This is, as we play this forward, Ryan Preece qualified well, ran in the top 10. I want to highlight right here, just before we get to this different strategy. You're looking at this point. Ryan Preece is 8th, SVG 23rd. That's a 15-point separation. And if you look at that and carry that forward, just that running position, because Preece has kind of run there. SVG's kind of been in this area. If that comes forward, that's 17 points. Then the 50-point separation is now what, 33?
Yeah, it's getting more real. And I think something that's important to point out here is Preece qualified well, right?
Yes.
Like they started their weekend, they're like, okay, we're going to be able to capitalize on the points deficit that we have on SVG. SVG looked like it was going to have a terrible weekend. And so as you mentioned, when we get to this section of the race, it's really where everything kind of flipped around.
And this is where Derek Finley decided he was going to 3-stop stage 2. And likewise, SVG did, Stephen Doran for SVG. In this position down here, I understand it. But up here, I kind of, this ended up unraveling the 60 cars day, because now we've put ourselves on the strategy that SVG's on and separated from the leaders.
And a couple of reasons that the guys won't do the 3-stop strategy early on is that you're trying to save tires. Because if you get 4 or 5 cautions at the very end, tires will overrule a bad handling car anytime. Unfortunately, Zane Smith had this issue right here that brought the caution out. But one other thing that I want to highlight right here as we talk about where Preece made that pit stop is if we go down here and we take a look at all of Ryan Preece's pit stops, this one right here that got him behind, oof.
Yeah.
2 seconds. Look how consistent they were throughout the entire day, but that one stop right there.
2 seconds slower, and rolling time because of a green flag cycle is about a half a second slower. That loses some track position to the cars that end up on your strategy as well. So kind of a combination. You got onto, if this caution doesn't fly, this may unravel differently. But when you're already running with these guys, getting off strategy to the leaders, I don't know that kind of put them back in SVG's environment.
Yeah, unfortunate for the 60. We know that actually the caution is going to catch them out or going to play against them multiple times in this race. And then once you get behind, the field's also close. It's hard to make that ground up.
It is. And then I want to talk forward to end of stage 2, because I actually feel like we've created the separation again. 60 car is up there, lead lap up in that situation. SVG's lap down. And this to me was a gutsy call by Stephen Doran. He's got 30-some laps on tires since he's pitted. They didn't pit. They took the wave around to get back on the lead lap, which I thought could have been an unraveling of their day. Ended up being, it looked like it because they had to pit under green while everybody else is going because they're finally out of tires and in a situation. That put them, I believe at this point, they're a couple laps down. They cycle themselves back because everybody pits and they're on good tires. That put him in a situation to get back in his track position.
Well, and when that caution came out, he's in the process of going to have to pit again sooner than the other guys as well. So the timing of the cautions played out perfectly for SVG, and it played out horribly for Ryan Preece and the 60 team.
Yeah, definitely put, here's the flip-flop, right? This strategy, we're still separated, but we flip-flopped in this whole cycle, and now SVG has track position over Ryan Preece.
Yeah, and the end of that shows that we thought initially when you start over here at the beginning of the day that Preece is going to make up maybe 20 points, maybe more points on SVG. When you get to the end, he actually ended up losing a few points.
Yeah, a tough day for a car that started out with a lot of potential. But one that I think we have to celebrate what's the gutsy call that Stephen Doran made with the 97. That wave around, cycled out, caution worked in their favor, got them in a position to actually gain points.
Yep. All right, so we see Preece SVG's day versus what the leaders were doing. Another guy that I want to throw up here real quick is Kyle Larson, because he had an interesting day. And when you look at the amount of pit stops that he was able to make. All right, so we'll put Briscoe up there, and then I'm also going to put Kyle Larson, who ended up finishing 6th. Get a look real quick at those 2 days. Look at the amount of pit stops that Larson had to make.
Yeah, it looks like chickenpox for Kyle Larson has come up here. Normal to this point, poor qualifying effort. They just weren't driving forward. And they're
losing ground. Honestly,
yes.
You look at the start of the race, Kyle Larson was going the wrong direction, you see, before they made their first pit stop.
Yep, made the pit stop a little bit early, kind of ended up netting out a little bit. But about in here, this is the interesting part to me, because as we talked about Ryan Preece and Shane Van Gisbergen back here at 118. They waited to the caution, but then they two-stopped from the caution out. That netted them out positive here. I believe that set them up for the wave around at this point, being just off the leader.
Actually, Larson had to do the wave around twice on the day, so it was quite an eventful day. But the thing that sticks out to me as I look at, if you could draw a straight line from this first pit stop to where they finished the race, they continued to progress the entire day. It did not look like the 5 team was going to have a good day, and the end result is they get a top 6 finish.
Yeah, and really, I'd like to know when Cliff interjected the conversation that, hey, we think we can get you to Knoxville.
You think it started ramping up?
I'm thinking it really got good at that point. Just the emotion in the driver, but they did. Cliff Daniels executed a great day. He pitted here as well. That's kind of, but everybody did. Kind of stayed on sequence once he got to this point, but made the double stop to get himself in a position he could fight forward.
Well, I think fortunately for the 5 car, their car got better throughout the day. So when your car gets better, you don't have to get creative on all these pit stops. If you can just pit stop, 1 lap shorter, it's a couple of seconds, you can leapfrog a couple of cars.
Yeah, it definitely works forward. You just got to get to the point where you're in the fight, and then you can work your way forward.
Yeah, well, an eventful day for Larson, gets a top 6 finish. And overall, I think, as I view Richmond, I mentioned this earlier, I just think it's such a fun day as a fan or a crew chief to be able to watch because it's not your typical race. There's so much strategy. You look, Larson stops 10 times, Briscoe stops 2 or 3 times less. Both finish really close on the track.
Well, we had a strategy that I called backwards on the radio broadcast. End of the race, we've got Joey Logano on what's traditional strategy, and we had the 20 car, Christopher Bell. He came off to a different strategy. I thought Christopher Bell was going to be in control of the race. It didn't end up unraveling that way.
Okay, so Todd, the one thing about Richmond, we know that you can get different strategies. I think that Adam Stevens and Christopher Bell do the best job at getting off strategy and capitalizing on it the most. We got a great look here of both Joey Logano, who ended up winning the race, and then Bell, who we talked about being off strategy.
Yeah, the last 100 laps of the race. And if you look at this, let's explain what this graph is. This is Joey Logano's the baseline since he's the winner. And this is the time delta to Joey Logano. So as this goes up, you're ahead of Joey Logano. As this goes down, you're behind Joey Logano. Just to kind of compare the two. This was 2 different strategies. As you come into this last run, Joey Logano 2 stops this. Christopher Bell 1 stops it. And really, I felt like they put themselves in a good position. This is where are we at? We've got 100 to go. Is it 50 and 50? Is it 33, 33, 33? And you look at this, pretty much they're equal cars, right?
Running the same lap times for the most part. For what it looks like the first 25 laps, they're running within a second of each other.
At this point, Joey Logano pits and decides to 2-stop. And that gives the 20 car Christopher Bell a 26-second lead. And that degrades because Joey Logano's on new tires.
Yep.
Christopher Bell's running the last part of his 50 laps. That degrades back to the point that Joey Logano gets close to Christopher Bell.
Almost gets all the way back to him. If we highlight that, you see he's going to get within, what's he get within, right? Get a little bit closer.
I mean, if that's 4, he's probably down to within 2.5.
Yeah, 2 seconds probably. And then you see the pit stop by Bell, who gets him behind now.
And this was so Bell's just over a lap down. But I felt like at this point that Bell was in the driver's seat. If you do the math on this, the math says he's in a good position. But the situation, because Christopher Bell is on his own strategy, I think he and maybe the 45 of Tyler Reddick were the 2 on this strategy. The slope of this line isn't as steep as I expect. Can you explain why?
So here's what happens in this scenario. When you're the odd car, where most of the guys had decided to do this in 2 stops, Bell decides to do it in 1. When you're on your own island, your pace is so different from everybody else. It's hard to manage the lap time on the track. And a lot of times when they figure up the analysis of what's going to be the best strategy, it's just 1 car on the track running the perfect line the whole time. When you're Bell and you're on these really old tires and guys are going by you on the inside, on the outside, everywhere, it's sucking your car around. It's putting you in a position that you don't want to be in. So instead of managing like a 24-second lap time, you might have a lap or 2 in there that's a 25-second lap time because you had to check up for that. So you can't be as consistent as the guys on new tires.
And then likewise, you can't run your blistering like qualifying laps because you're having to pass cars. And
there's people in your way.
Right?
Yeah.
So we call that traffic friction. And I talked to different crew chiefs in the garage, and being on the wrong strategy can be anywhere 10 to 12 seconds as they feel this out. That's what this is. And if Christopher Bell drives this back to the point where he's there, I think we've got a fighting chance of making the end of this happen for the 20 car.
So what sticks out to me, you see right here, Bell 14.8 seconds back. If you go back to right before when they tried to pit,
he was up
Yeah, it's
over a lap.
12 more seconds, right? The difference in that he lost in this span that we're talking about trying to manage on those older tires.
He needed to put Joey Logano a lap down
Absolutely.
at this point.
Yeah, just
to
didn't
have
make up the ground that he needed.
Right. So, and when this didn't happen, you really felt like the race was down to the 19 and 22.
Without a doubt. And if you're Adam Stevens or Christopher Bell, at this point right here, you know.
But you've made
it's
your
not gonna
bed.
happen, but you're committed. You're hoping that a caution comes out, that it can get recycled a little bit. Once you wait 2 or 3 laps and don't do the pit cycle, you've committed.
You're looking for a caution somewhere behind
Right.
this, in this window right here.
Yeah,
If I can get a caution here, I got a shot.
And we referenced it, Preece, the caution's not working out for him. The cautions didn't work out the way that Bell needed it. They did work out for SVG, and he was able to capitalize on it. And that's why races are so hard to win. You have to have everything go your way, and the 22 did.
Yeah, it definitely did, and you've got to have the cautions lay the way you need to call the right strategy.
Again, this is just a great example of, to me, why I like watching a Richmond race and seeing how creative crew chiefs can get.
Yeah, this is why I love Richmond, because I had a bigger impact.
Because you're a crew chief, absolutely. Welcome back to Inside the Race. Todd and I are going to break down everything that you need to look forward to this weekend. And Todd, I'm going to start with Richmond was all about strategy. Loudon, it's a little more cut and dry.
Yeah, this is one that goes forward 301 laps, and we've seen the racetrack. To me, this always got me as a crew chief because 2 tires can play. 4 tires can play, stay out calls can play. A little bit of those, we don't have all that lap time fall off that we saw at Richmond here at Loudon. And this racetrack, what's your memories of it?
Well, I hated Loudon. I always enjoyed going that far north because it's just the weather was nice and it's a little different food, like the atmosphere around the track. The fans up there are really fun. They're passionate. They have that modified race normally on Friday, which is, honestly, it's the best race of the weekend that we have there. But the track itself, I enjoyed practicing on it. I just didn't like racing on it. I found it really hard to pass. It's one of those places that, a 10th or 15th place car can stay out and lead. It is a challenging place to pass. But I think you bring up a great point, and I remembered this as you're talking about it. The fact that it's getting wider, to me, makes it much more fun as a driver. There was a time that we ran almost on the apron there. It was like everyone, you ran the middle, and then everyone would migrate towards the bottom to pass.
Which the apron's like 1 degree of banking, just
it's
enough to get water off of it.
The apron, if the track feels flat, the apron feels banked the wrong way. Like you get on it and you're like, ooh, it's like the left front feels super high in the air. But yeah, I wasn't a big fan of the racetrack. I like the atmosphere. I like going up there, but just as a driver, it's a tough place.
It is, and from a crew chief, calling this race is a challenge as well. But we saw last year, I brought up the 2-tire, no tire. Ryan Blaney won on 2 tires at the end of the race. Josh Berry stayed out on the last one, stayed out on old tires and finished second. William Byron took 4 and finished third. So you can do all 3. Having track position matters here, but having a good handling race car and being able to just to get the power down and exit the corner. Sometimes you can roll to a point, but it seemed like you wanted to straighten that corner out to get out. But a cool, short 301 laps.
Yeah, it's 301 laps, and time-wise, it goes by pretty quick. It's a tough race, though. I remember here in Phoenix, even though distance-wise, it was pretty short, inside the car, they were tiring. This place is one of those places I feel like you're really tense, and I don't know what it is about the track, but pretty heavy braking. And then I think just because of how flat it is, you're kind of trying to hold yourself up inside of the car. So challenging track for a driver. You just said 2 names, though. You said Blaney and Berry. And so all I can think of is Penske just had this epic weekend at Richmond. You have to feel good if you're that group going to Loudon.
You just talked to Joey Logano's crew chief, Paul Wolfe, and he didn't sound like he was dreading going to Loudon this weekend.
No, you made me laugh, though, because earlier in the show, I asked you, like, what makes Paul Wolfe so good? And you're like, no emotion. And I thought that the whole time we were doing the interview with him, whether it's the highs or the lows, it's kind of just the same, Paul
It's
Wolfe.
business. It's business for Paul Wolfe. And this is a racetrack that you've got to execute all weekend, because if you get yourself behind, you don't have recovery time. Stage 1, you'll run straight through if it goes without cautions. Stage 2 and 3, you'll one stop unless the cautions drive. And I've won here. I won here with a car that wasn't the best car here, but we had a caution with 50 to go, and I knew we weren't going to win, so we came and put tires on. But then I needed cautions to stack to put me in the right position to win. you got to kind of have fortune or you've got to execute really well. It's going to be an interesting weekend. As you talked about that apron at the bottom, I saw last year's race, they got to like lane 4 and diamond back down through. So that can make the exit of turn 2 gets really narrow because you've got 4 lanes that are trying to get the same spot.
Yeah, it's because of the way, that track from an aerial perspective is very symmetrical. It drives completely different, has those bumps into turn 3,
Yes.
which are a massive challenge for all of the teams. But I love like the direction you're going with how wide the track got. That's fun when you get to have options as a driver. And it's weird to me that they're actually running all the way up on this like older asphalt, which you think would have
No
less
grip.
grip than what.
Yes.
Yeah, it doesn't add up. But it is fun. I think about SVG at Richmond last weekend. The fact that he had moved up the racetrack. Do these guys learn something maybe in the sim this week that gives them a direction for that?
Yeah, we'll have to see. And it seems like the track has an evolution as you start to lay rubber in, that some other lanes come into play. So we'll see how the weekend plays out and how that evolves during the 301 laps.
Any predictions for this weekend from Todd Gordon?
I would think that it'd be hard to beat a Penske car with the run that they've had. I mean, you talked about it. Joey Logano and Paul Wolfe, they won at North Wilkesboro. They won at Richmond. Coming to a racetrack, that's Joey's home track. I mean, if you think about where he grew up, Blaney was really strong here. The Penske cars were good here last year, but the Hendrick cars look better this weekend. The JGR cars I never rule out. So I don't have anybody I'd lock down, but if I had to, I'm an old Penske guy, so
Yeah.
I'll say they're going to have a good weekend.
Well, I'm going to go against you on this. I am going to say Christopher Bell wins this weekend. He's really good at this racetrack. He's been good in every series that he's run there, and I think he gets it done.
I like the opportunity.
All right, guys, that's our show for today. A lot of fun being able to break everything down. I got to thank Kyle Petty and Todd Gordon for being a part of the show today. We also got to hear from the winning crew chief, Paul Wolfe, from last weekend at Richmond. Looking forward to Loudon this weekend. Another short track on the schedule. Can Penske make it 2 in a row? You can tune in at 3 p.m. on USA and find out.